Hello and welcome to Rules and Rulings, where we help you be judge, jury, and hopefully not executioner of your D&D 5e games. We're late to the party on this one, but the channel is themed around courts, so that feels appropriate. We're discussing an element of the One D&D playtest as polarizing as the mechanic itself, critical successes and failures.
We will sometimes need to set a DC if one is not provided by a written adventure, and in that case, always in a homebrewed adventure. There is no mention in the section on setting DCs of tailoring the DCs to suit the person attempting. The DC is static, and the only thing you are suggested to keep in mind is the general level of your party. The DMG does mention critical successes and failures, noting that while they don't have any special effect, they can be adjudicated to add additional benefits. Note that in this case, the assumption is that the roll of 20 will be a success and a roll of 1 will be a failure.
The One D&D playtest information puts forth a new rule for D20 tests, based on an incredibly common playstyle. A natural 20 is always a success, and a natural 1 is always a failure. This applies not only to attack rolls, but to ability checks and saving throws as well. There is also clarification that ability checks should only really be called for if the DC is within a certain reasonable range.
So the issue is this. If a natural 1 is an automatic failure, and a 20 is an automatic success, the dice rolls can bypass the narrative of the characters. If a fighter with 20 strength fails to open a door, a rogue with 10 strength can make the same attempt and roll a natural 20, succeeding.
Knocking the door off its hinges. This is the exact example given in the DMG for why one might use the automatic success variant rule. If you feel a character's skills are suitable to the task at hand without real risk of failure, simply let them succeed. This section of the guide also covers two great options for dealing with tension between what you want to happen and what the dice show: succeeding at a cost and degrees of failure. Succeeding at a cost allows a character who doesn't match the target of a test to succeed, but at a cost. Succeeding with the addition of a complication or a setback that might need to be addressed immediately or eventually.
So if you feel the narrative of the character doesn't quite align with the automatic success granted by a natural 20, you can introduce a complication relevant to their approach. Maybe when the rogue gets a natural 20 to burst the door down, they find a weak spot in the material and not only open the door, but get their boot stuck in the busted material.
Degrees of failure presents options for how much things go wrong when you fail. Giving the example of attempting to disarm a trap, and deciding whether the trap is also triggered by the failed attempt, according to how much the DC was missed by.
So, you have a character who shouldn't really fail at a task, but you have them roll because of time pressure, or even just because they ask. If that character rolls a 1, you can have them fail, but suffer no other complications other than lost time. Characters not so suited to the task might have to deal with worse failures.
In addition to these approaches, which let you skip the die roll entirely, or give you tools to deal with a result that doesn't make sense to you, there is another game mechanic at your disposal to help reinforce the narrative you're after: advantage. If you give a character who is especially suited to a task advantage on the roll, their odds of failing despite modifiers drop from 1 in 20 to 1 in 400, less likely than having twins, though admittedly you'll probably take more shots at this. Likewise, if you don't think your barbarian is well suited to a specific history check, disadvantage drops their odds of pulling the answer out of their arse to a much more reasonable number. So those are all the ways to deal with the new One D&D critical result rule without ignoring it entirely. Whether or not this is the rule they should use going forward will depend on how much support the new DMG equivalent gives to making these kinds of complicated judgment calls. When newer DMs are learning the game, viewing ability checks as completely binary leads to seducing the dragon and other shenanigans. But what do you think? I only covered the effect on ability checks, but this rule also applies to saving throws. I also didn't cover any interactions with reliable talent or halfling luck. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you next time.